Okay.
Welcome back to the Leadership Show, to the Happiness Platform. Robert Greene again. The number one law of power, the number one law to achieve everything you've ever wanted to achieve gets shared right here by the man himself, the master of all masters, the master who penned the international bestsellers, Mastery, The Art of Seduction, The 48 Laws of Power. But hey, let's get right into it. And again, take some notes. Put this stuff into your own life and shoot me some notes as well, because I really like to hear your opinion too. And a massive thanks to our team here at Populous for sponsoring this series. www.populous.com.au or happinessplatform.com. Enjoy.
Hey, listen, I've got a couple of really things that you wrote that stood out to me that I had to bring it up, okay? If that's cool. I love this bit about, I call it Followship, and you call it never outshine the master, rule number 1, okay?
That's right.
Talk to me a little bit about that and the importance of that. How do you apply it, or how have you seen it applied well? Whatever you want to talk about.
Well, that's law number 1 for many reasons. It's a story, it begins with a story of Louis XIV and his finance minister, who tried so hard to please Louis and hopefully get a better position within the court by throwing a magnificent party in his honor. And the next day, the finance minister is thrown into prison for the rest of his life. Never knows why, allegations of corruption, but really it was because in that party that he threw in honor of Louis XIV, all the attention was on him, and all the women were admiring the finance minister throwing the party and the magnificent food and the fireworks, and none of the attention was on Louis, and he felt outshone. He felt like this person who was his inferior was actually more liked than he was, and it made him very unhappy. Now, I knew that story for years, and that's why I wanted to begin with 48 Laws of Power, because I love that story. What it illustrates is that people never say what their thoughts are. They never tell you, what you're making me feel insecure. I feel envious of you. I feel inferior. They never say it. They hide it, and then they act in a way that could be sabotage you or throw you in prison or fire you or whatever. It's an elemental basic law of human nature and power, and the law and the lesson is that people above you, and there are always people above you, even if you run your own business, and there's always someone above you, have insecurities. Every human being has insecurities. Your natural assumption is that your boss, your master, that man or woman above you, is so powerful they don't care anymore. They're not petty, and they're not worried about their ego and their vanity. That's not true. Actually, the more powerful you are, the more insecure you can become. You have more people looking at you. You have more responsibility. Am I getting the respect that I deserve for my actions? Maybe I'm not. You have actually more reasons to feel insecure. You're riddled with insecurities and with ego issues. So you, as the subordinate, have to be aware of the psychology of the people around you and not be locked in your head and in that monologue inside your head and in your own ideas. So in the pursuit of trying to please your boss and show him or her how great you are, you could actually make them feel insecure. You can actually make them feel, oh, you're younger, you're better looking, you've got more friends, you understand technology better. That's making me uncomfortable. I'm going to push you to the side, or I'm going to give you a less responsibility. You're not aware of that. You've got to become aware of the people around you and the psychology of your boss, because your life can be miserable if you don't learn law number 1 in that book. If you go around outshining the master, if you go around trying to impress people and inadvertently making them feel insecure, you will be fired. You will have a miserable life. You will never get far. You could be talented, you could be Albert Einstein himself, you will never get that way far, because you don't know how to operate with the people in the court, the people who are above you or who are your equals. Law number 1 is very elemental, and I can tell you, I violated it myself.
So have I, Robert. So have I, definitely.
Yeah, I think everybody has. It's can you learn the lesson, and can you learn to control yourself is the key.
Yeah. And I think the practices that you use, particularly around that self-regulation, the way you start your mornings, and since I have dedicated my life down that path, I've been able to look at it and have a laugh at how I put myself in two amazingly, opportunistic positions where I was by far the best performer, yet got moved to the side, right? Because
yeah, there you go.
Okay, two big roles, big paying money, international gigs, right? But even without design, it got there, right? It really got there.
That's the same story for me, and the same story for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You outperform everybody else in the group, and yet something happens where you're fired, or somebody else is promoted. And this could happen 2 or 3 times until you realize what's the pattern, particularly if you're young and you're a little bit naive.
Exactly. And I call that, I'm glad that's your number one rule, because I talk a lot about fellowship and the importance to be able to take direction even if you don't agree with it, right?
Yeah. And the reverse of the law, or the other way of looking at it, is if you can make the person above you feel better about themselves. There's an element of manipulation in my books that we cannot deny, and I'm not going to run away from.
Well, that's life, isn't it? I mean, everyone's manipulating someone in some place, right? At some time. How else do you attract that girl to be with you? How else do you see what?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I agree with you, but if you're able to turn it around and make the master, the boss, feel actually better about him or herself, as if their jokes are funny, as if young women are attracted to him, as if his ideas are brilliant, or hers, you're going to instead of being pushed down or to the side, you're going to be elevated by that. So that's the other side of the law.
It's a wonderful strategy. It's a wonderful strategy. Now, this other one I discovered a little bit later in life as well, which is when one is chasing and building and going out there, we tend to say more, and then we open ourselves to be, I guess, there's a lot more ammunition out there. So which is, law number 4, always say less than necessary, right?
Oh, yeah.
I find that fascinating and wholly true, like so true. Right?
Well, it is very true, and it's based on basic human psychology, so several aspects of it. We respond in an almost animal-like way to people. We have nonverbal communication, and we're not maybe conscious of it, but when we're in a meeting, or we're meeting someone for the first time, or somebody that we know, we're measuring them. We're gauging their strength, their weakness, their insecurity, their self-confidence. And when a person talks a lot, it signals to us weakness. It signals to us someone who's insecure. Not always, because there's some people who are very eloquent and who could tell a great story, so maybe that's different. But oftentimes, people who talk and talk and talk and talk and can't stand any kind of silence, we feel that there's something weak about it. They can't control themselves. If they can't control themselves, they can't control other aspects of their behavior. And inevitably, when someone talks and talks and talks and talks, they say something stupid. They say something offensive. They say something that makes us go, oh, you're not so great. On the other hand, if you talk less, we have to talk, you have to say something. But if you just say less than necessary, if you just say what's needed and stop, then suddenly, wow, that's pretty interesting. That's really wise. The other person tries to fill in the gaps of what you didn't say. And when they're thinking about what you said and trying to fill in the gaps, you have power over them. It's even a marketing thing. When you get the other person to do the thinking for you, you've hooked them. You seem mysterious. You seem someone in control. Everything is in your hands. You're the one controlling the dynamic. People are wondering, what didn't he or she say? What is unexpressed in that? It's just basic power.
They remember you more. There's an interest. There's a self-interest, and I love it how really gels beautifully with Law 16. Use absence, right, to increase respect and honor. I see amazing synergy with that, and it really works, right? Really works, doesn't it?
I mean, you could say it's unfortunate, and it's probably the primate within us. But when people are too present, when they're too in your face, you tend to lose a little bit of respect for them. The mystery is gone. It's most obvious in areas of seduction and love. You first fall in love with that woman.
Yes.
You don't know much. I'm talking from my point of view. You don't know much about her. She's mysterious. She's wonderful. She's this goddess. You poeticize her. And then you get to know her day by day, and you hear her thoughts, and they're not very interesting, and all these other things, and suddenly all the mystery is gone, and your love is gone. But when there's some distance, when people absent themselves, when they're not there all the time, suddenly you're thinking about them, or you have space to fantasize about them. Napoleon Bonaparte used to say, if I don't go to the theater every night that I'm expecting, people are going to be thinking about me. Why isn't Napoleon here tonight at this performance? Does he not like this particular writer? Is he off with his latest mistress? What's he doing? In that moment that they're thinking about you, you have power. So absence, not always, because in the beginning of a relationship or any kind of situation, you do want to be present. If you suddenly absent yourself in the beginning, you're now the new CEO of a company, and you're not there at all, and you're off skiing, that's not going to work.
No.
But if you establish a presence and people in the company know you, and then suddenly a year later you go off for a week and you're not there, it has power. So knowing when to take yourself out of circulation is what will increase your mystique.
Definitely. A real quick example of that was I took my little 15-month, I put him on my back yesterday, those carry packs that they do. It's beautiful. It's a heavy boy though. It was a great workout, and we have this gorgeous bay around here, so we went away, and I said, I'll be a couple of hours. It ended up being 3.5 hours, right? Got back home, and my wife's like, whoa, I missed you guys. I'm like, this morning you were telling me about how I'm not, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
right?
even in a small sense like that, just for a few hours will do the trick. That's right.
And so one of the chapters in my book is the company you keep. Okay.
Yeah.
And I love it how you just put it out here in Law 10. Okay. And avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. And I don't think anyone should apologize for that, because it's highly infectious, right? I often say to people that I hire, that they've got to be self-motivated, they've got to love them to who they are, and they've got to really, know that they're a good person and be a good person, because the others, the ones that whine and always losing, they'll suck the life out of you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would like to somehow get it to a mathematical equation where all it takes is one person in a group of 10 to be that kind of whiner, negative type, always feels like he or she's the victim, never gets the right, and everything's unjust. That one person in a group of 10 can destroy or ruin the dynamic and spread discontent. I don't know if it's 1 in 10. I'd like to get it to a mathematical equation, but I haven't. I've had a lot of flack for that law. People think it's a cruel and vicious law, as if I'm saying...
It's such an honest, sorry to interject. It's a very honest law, right? And it's something that I, as a father, you guide your children. And I say to them, hey, listen, pick your friends wisely. Pick the ones who have this goodness and love and are happy, right? I don't think it's cruel at all. I think it's the truth. And that's the problem with the world. People don't like the truth, but they know it's the truth, right? They know that it's the truth.
I mean, that's why I think my books sell well, is that I go the opposite direction. I'm kind of even going a little further in the opposite direction. I'm hitting you over the head with what I think is the truth. But in that particular law, the idea is based on simple, once again, elemental human psychology, which is we feel like we're individuals, but in fact we're extremely susceptible to the emotions of people around us. We are social animals. The great Japanese samurai strategist Musashi,
wow.
He always talked about getting the opponent to catch your mood. I'm going to infect him with my mood. I'm going to act kind of sleepy in this sword fight in which it's life or death, and I'm going to infect my opponent with this sleepy energy, and just as he's starting to go a little bit, lose attention for half a second,
That's a nice strike.
I'm going to kill him. But we're extremely susceptible to the emotions of other people. I could go into why that is, I won't right now, but we are. And so if you're around somebody who's negative, who looks at life through the lens of everything sour and bleak, but who's also a drama queen or a drama king, everything's dramatic, everything happens, why me? Why is always the bad thing? You're going to pick that up. You're going to be infected with their unhappiness, their discontent, their guilt. It's going to get under your skin. And one person like that can ruin your life. I have an example in the book of this one woman who was always infecting everyone around her. She infects the king of Bavaria, and it destroys his career, and he has to leave, he's deposed as the king because of this one woman that enters his life. They can ruin you. And you've got to be able to, the opposite is equally powerful. You want to find people who are happy, have a good attitude, to be around, because they're going to infect you with the opposite energy. These are kind of life lessons that nobody teaches you in business school or even your parents, but they can save you so many years of misery, I can't tell you.
You know, you're a man of my own heart, because it's something that I just don't hold back on talking about. Doesn't matter if it's at a corporate chat, you know, whatever it may be, or if it's just talking to my loved ones. And I tend to ask them to call behaviors, if it's me, call my behavior if I'm going down that path ever, because we have some weak moments. But not
Sure.
so if you meditate every day. You don't have those.
Well, you have less of them.
Less of them, yeah. But if someone in the family does that, I call those behaviors, but, you know, people are not going to like you.
Do me a favor. You like this, if you're learning from it, it's helping you, or you know someone it's going to help, please just press that like button, share it, give us a comment, or send us a request in terms of what you'd like covered in one of our next upcoming series. Thank you.
Do not commit to anyone. Talk to me about that, if that's all right.
Well, it's similar to the chapter that we've highlighted about using absence or saying less than necessary. Often the middleman or woman in a situation has the most power. If you can put yourself in the position where people are fighting over you, it's kind of like the entrepreneurial way in life, where instead of working for a large corporation in which you're kind of drowned out by all the other people there, and you don't get much attention. If you are a smaller group, a smaller company, and you get everyone else to fight over you, you have much more power. So we tend to commit too much to others in life, and the psychology behind that is simple. If you have, I try and say in that law, commit to yourself. Don't be so giving sometimes. So if you join a group or a company, have some self-distance. Be able to say, really, what this is about, and it's important in the world today, is this is about my career, where I'm going to be in 3 or 4 or 5 years. I don't have to be loyal to this company because they're not going to be loyal to me. The first moment that there's downsizing or there's a merger, my job will be gone. Don't commit internally, psychologically. So to keep your distance and think about yourself, your career, your future, and maybe 4 or 5 years down the line, you're going to leave that company and you're going to commit somewhere else, but you're never going to commit yourself, your whole self. You're always going to hold something back. That's the deeper aspect of the law. But in general, the person who doesn't commit, you know it in a relationship. It's a little bit cruel, but the man or woman who is less committed is the one that has almost everything on his or her terms. Okay, it works in love, but it also works in business.
It does. It totally works in business. I mean, one of the things I realized later in life in terms of why I progressed so quick up in the performance in certain organizations is because I was one, particularly as a young dad, I wanted to get home, you know, and help out.
Right.
So I wouldn't go to after work drinks and social events. And the other thing was I didn't drink, right? So it was like, so people would be like, hold on, this guy who's charismatic and out there, he never turns up to the drink. So he turns up and says hi very, very quickly, and he says, I've got to go to my wife and kids, right?
Right.
And actually, I didn't realize, I thought he was working against me, but actually worked for me. Because I wasn't giving.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, it totally makes sense. I know you're an example of recreation, okay, yourself. And I know myself, I've changed directions several times, more as I got older and more as I realized that we really should be doing things that within our nature and, things that we love, right? Can you please talk a little bit, because there's a lot of people who get into a whole lot of anxiety and stuck in roles and places in life, and, it's a grind for them every day. Can you talk to me a bit more about this law number 25 in terms of recreating?
Well, it depends on your circumstances in life and who you are. And I make it clear in the preface to my book and in several of the laws that this isn't a Bible. Not every law is applicable to your moment in life. Okay, you have to take it depending on your circumstances. But recreating yourself is the idea that people are always trying to define you. And they have subtle ways of defining you and keeping you in a box or a cage. They see you a certain way. They want to pigeonhole you. They want to stereotype you. Oh, Roh is someone who's only good at this. That's his strength. He's not good at that. And da-da-da-da-da. It's a power thing. When people try and define you, they have this image of you. And it's a subtle way of limiting who you are. It's that one of the unconscious games of power that are continually going on. And the person who is able to define the other person is the one with power. So you want to turn that around. You want to be the one that can define yourself. You don't want to just simply accept, oh, they see me as someone who's a hard worker, a grinder. All right, that's who I am. Because your tendency will be to internalize that and become what other people think of you. You want to have freedom. You want to have room to move. You want to have the ability to explore other aspects of your personality. So you deliberately show them something else about your character that goes against everything else they thought. Very powerful. But it's also very cleansing for you. You're expanding the roles that you can play in life. The 48 laws of power is the idea that we are actors in a social game is one of the primary principles behind it. We are actors. It's the primate in us. We are playing roles. It's like theater. We're playing at being the airline pilot. Have you ever seen an airline pilot who acts like a rock star? No, they have an airline pilot voice. They dress a certain way. They all look the same way. They're playing a role. And they're going a little far because they know if people saw what I was like at home, they wouldn't trust me as their pilot, right? People are playing roles, and you want to be able to play more roles in life. You want to be able to have more diversity. You want to be able to be this and that and someone else. It gives you power. It makes people don't know who you are. And if they don't know who you are, you can go too far with that. If you have no core, people think that they'll think you're nuts. And there are a lot of people like that in the world today, and we call them borderline personalities. You don't want to be a borderline personality. You have a core, but to the degree that people can't pigeonhole you, can't nail you, saying, "Oh, Roh, he's like that." You have power. So occasionally, you need to recreate yourself. You need to show them something new, and you need to come up with something new about yourself.
Wow, that's beautiful. You're a very wise man, my friend. I'm highly appreciative. And what's beautiful is this wisdom doesn't get taught, and it should get taught in schools and in homes.
Yeah.
What you're talking about here is really knowing yourself and knowing the field of play. Okay?
Yeah.
That's how I see it. You're talking about let's get to know the field of play, and you're one of the players in this field, right? So why not look at it from a perspective where you can see,
right,
the cause and effect.
That's right. That's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah, I love it. For me, I understand it because once I understood that, my life changed. Anxieties and restlessness and the chasing all disappeared, and everything became quite humorous and
Oh,
quite
very
funny.
good.
Right?
Right.
It's just a wonderful place to be. The 50th in a moment, if that's okay, because I love 50 Cent. Right? I mean that his music played in a lot of my cars when I was spending an hour in commute, right?
Yeah.
Before a major meeting, etc. This was a few years ago, obviously. I
That's
act a
right.
lot. I act like a child all the time, Robert. All the time, right?
That's okay.
People always
That's
think my
good.
sons and I are brothers because I'm always probably acting more childish than they are.
Oh,
Keeps me happy. Keeps me happy. And
yeah.
in terms of like active, and staying in tune with, all sorts of music which I love, all of those things. So how was it? How was it hanging out with 50?
Well, it was great. It was a wonderful experience. I wrote 3 books prior to writing the 50th Law, and those books were most obviously written alone in my room, communing with dead people, that were all the subjects of my historical figures. So I got a chance to get out of my apartment or my house, go to New York, be with a living example of someone who's definitely a person of power, and observe him and learn lessons from real life. You are learning a lot of lessons yourself with your consulting, you're working for corporations, real life lessons. I felt I was a little bit imbalanced. I had a lot of real life experiences, but my books, the research was reading. So it was a chance to get away from it. And he's someone who kind of embodies the 48 laws of power. I call him the Napoleon Bonaparte of hip hop, a great strategist,
Yeah.
a great marketing genius. I saw him do some things that were really quite exciting and interesting. Has a lot of presence of mind. He gets very calm, almost a Zen-like energy, which I maintain comes from his near-death experience. Being shot in the face 9 times
Yeah.
will tend to make you calm if you survive.
Yeah.
So, and basically his fearlessness, which is what the 50th law is.
Yes.
It's a meditation on the power of being fearless, not the cliched fearlessness of being all macho and in that sense, but more of a more grounded sense of not being afraid to be different, not being afraid to be on your own, not being afraid to confront people when you need to confront them, not being afraid of reality, which is the first chapter of the 50th Law. That kind of power, which I saw in him, that was sort of the seed for creating this book together. And he's a great person. He's not what you think. It was funny because our first encounter was in a steakhouse in New York in the back room. It was like something out of The Godfather, where he was with his 13 people in his group and I was by myself. And both of us were expecting someone else. I was expecting this kind of very intimidating thug. I was a little bit nervous. He was expecting this intense, older Henry Kissinger type guy. We were both a little bit nervous. And it ended up, I'm not like what he thought, and he's not what I thought. He's very sweet, very down to earth. He listens to you. And so I'm not a big person into celebrities.
Yes.
But he was like very normal and very real, so I felt comfortable working with him. He's actually a really nice guy. I mean, don't get me wrong, you don't want to cross him. He's got another side to him. I've seen that other side, but he's a lot sweeter and nicer than you think.
And I think that's I often talk about a lot of my studies, actually, the Eastern philosophies, as you know, and you mentioned the Lone Samurai earlier as well, so I go back, and if you look at life in general, it's always about accumulation and identity and all of these things that creates this fear of loss, this fear of harm, and once we realize certain aspects, it's getting a little bit too deep now, but in terms of eternal and all of that stuff, and once you are able to like look in, it's amazing how quickly you can get rid of that fear, that fear that binds you and holds you, and controls you and throws
Right.
you around to the emotions of other people. I like to use, you get kicked around like a football, right?
Right.
Of other people's emotions. But having that level of fearlessness also brings a level of serenity.
That's right.
And
That's right.
hence the
Very true.
calmness you talk about as well, right? So, hey, how's the seduction techniques working for you?
Well, I've been in a relationship for many years, so but when I was in my 20s,
Yeah.
before I wrote the book, they were working very well. Thank you.
So there's people trying to find the nice partner or just to have a good time. What wisdom could you share with them?
You want to find a nice partner, or you want to have a lot of fun? Which is it?
Oh wow!
Or how old
never,
are you? Or
never
where
shall
are
the
you
two
in life?
meet.
I mean, it's different. It depends on on who you are. Some people in your 20s meeting that perfect woman and having a relationship is the be all and end all. Other people, for men, want to wait until their 30s. It depends. But if you want to have success, let's say with the other gender or same, if that's what your proclivities, the ability to get outside of yourself and not be thinking about yourself and thinking about them, him or her, that's the ultimate power of the seducer. Because normally you're on your first date or encounter, you're in a bar, and you're thinking, do I look good? Am I saying something stupid? You're thinking about yourself, and you're missing all of the nonverbal cues that the woman or man is sending you. You're missing information that they're telling you about their childhood, about their likes and dislikes. And they feel it. They feel you're disengaged, and it's not seductive. What is seductive is to have someone pay you deep attention. Because think in your own life, how many times do you ever experience somebody paying you deep attention? Someone who actually listens to what you're saying and actually responds to something that you said and even tries to get inside your experience, enter your spirit, which is one of the chapters in The Art of Seduction. Pretty damn rare. You give that to, let's say, a woman, it'll have power. So the ability to stop that internal monologue and to get inside their skin, their world, their way of thinking, that will open up vast seductive possibilities for you.
That's wonderful, wonderful advice, and that's good advice in general. I imagine to having good relationships and attracting the right people into your life.
And even in the business sense, you don't want to be sexualizing business relationships, obviously. But I talk in The Art of Seduction, it's not just about sex. Seduction is something in politics, it's in a social setting, it's in marketing. And even when you're in the office and you're dealing with a peer, a colleague, or a boss, your ability to listen with deep attention and enter their spirit and give them, when it's appropriate, a gift that reflects their taste, very powerful.
Hey, Robert, I can see totally why you're so successful, man. I mean, your attention to detail, the commitment in 2 years, 3 years, now 4 years, putting into these books and bunkering down.
You see these gray hairs?
I've got a couple too, mate, back here, yeah. I mean, that commitment, that drive, it's so beautiful to see. And what I love is where the books come from. Obviously, speaking to you and, seeing the stuff and the interviews that you've done before as well. But when you actually chat with someone, you can see it's the motivation, that's the right motivation, which is helping people. And I'm so happy for you, man. I'm so happy that you're kicking so many goals. And I'm so delighted you're so generous in making this time.
My pleasure, Roh.
It's humbling and it's beautiful. And you've also motivated me to, finish off the work that I've started.
Just keep in mind this one rule and law, and people even out there who want to be a writer. It's all about organization. Now, you can go too far where it's just so tightly organized that there's no spirit to it.
Yes.
But I don't think you're going to have that problem. I think just make sure that the ideas are organized.
Yes.
You don't repeat yourself. Each chapter is fresh and new. The first chapter is as exciting as the 13th chapter. Just pay deeper attention than you have, and you probably have paid attention, to the structure of your book and to the clarity of your thoughts.
Wonderful.
I'm sure it'll be a success. And please send me a version of it when it's ready.
Oh, I definitely will.
Stay tuned for a whole lot more awesome podcasts. This series has 13 of the world's top leaders in mindset, leadership, success, bringing up children, Harvard professors, top-notch businessmen, billionaires, whatever takes your fancy, swamis. We've got them all. Do us a favor, hit subscribe, and what I'll do is I'll send you 3 free videos as well. Share it with your family and friends, and we'll extend that to them as well. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. And I hope you're actually getting something out of it as well. Write to me, let me know, okay? Thank you.